Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another Walking Dead video. So in this one here, I wanted to talk about something actually that I saw on Twitter, or I guess X, and yeah, I really want to talk about this scene because honestly, I went back and rewatched the scene, and it really is an emotional scene. It's a reunion between Rick and Daryl. I mean, it's a lot of the characters reuniting, but specifically the stuff with Rick and Daryl, like, it's a reunion that I think, is forgotten about quite a bit. So yeah, I do want to talk about it. So before we go any further, make sure to be a subscriber if you do want to get all my Walking Dead content like this, but let's actually get into the reunion here. So first of all, I saw this on Twitter, or I guess X, from @SunshinesRedis, and I rewatched the scene and I was just like, wow, this is honestly a really incredible scene, and it just got me really excited about the fact that when Rick and Daryl do reunite, like, it's gonna be a really massive reunion. And so I went to go and actually like rewatch the scene here. And so in the scene, we actually see Rick and everyone else here. There's Michonne, there's Carl. Maggie actually first sees them. She's like at the hilltop and she goes up to the tower. She starts to smile because she sees everybody showing up here. And so, they made it back here. Like, they actually made it back to the hilltop. Whatever was happening in Alexandria, like, they're actually here now. And so, it's the first time that all the characters are really seeing each other, after all the Glenn stuff happened. And it's really like, that's the emotion that you feel here. Like, that's just, because after Glenn's death, everyone was so broken and like no one wanted to fight back. And, Daryl was taken away and like everyone was just separated and Rick didn't want to fight back. Like, honestly, it was a really... It was a hard season to watch. I think season 7 is one of those seasons that at the time when watching this, it was hard to watch because it just wasn't the same as previous seasons in terms of, the story and whatnot. And things were a lot slower here at this point here, and we just didn't really know what to expect. Like, I think the whole cliffhanger thing upset a lot of people. And at this point, people just felt, I think, kind of sad watching The Walking Dead. It was just something that I think, looking back at it now, it's one of those scenes that I really do think is forgotten quite a bit. Like, we do see Rick show up here and they're all so happy here. And Rick tells Maggie here, like, you were right. Like, everything you were saying before, you were right. Like, I should have trusted you, basically. And so, I mean, we do kind of see that to this day, right? Like, it's kind of funny when you look at Rick and Maggie, and like, we haven't talked about this a lot over the years because Rick was taken to the CRM and Maggie, like, I guess the characters just being split up for so long, it's just one of those things where you don't really compare where the characters are overall compared to where they used to be, right? Because that used to be something we talked about all the time, was like, well, which character is like the better leader, or who should be the leader now, sort of thing. And I think Rick at this point, he's not really the leader anymore. Like, he kind of gave that up a long time ago. Like, obviously in season 9, I would say he was for sure, but he was taken away. He wasn't the leader at all in The Ones Who Live. Like, he was just trying to get out of there. Going back to the Commonwealth or CRM or Alexandria, wherever he goes, like, I don't know what's next for him. And that would be really interesting in terms of a new series or a season 2. Like obviously we know we're going to see Rick again. So I don't know where he's going to show up, if it's going to be a cameo in Daryl Dixon, if it's going to be in a new series or a season 2. Like, we're obviously going to see them reunite at some point. And so I don't know if, Rick is going to ever be the leader again. I think that would be pretty cool if he was, but it all depends on where he goes. Like, if he goes back to Alexandria, I could see him becoming the leader. And again, Rick is the kind of person that, like, he doesn't really necessarily want to be the leader. Like, I think if he went back to Alexandria, he wouldn't say, all right, I'm going to be the leader now. I think he would just be like, well, however things are being run here, I'm just gonna, sort of follow that, right? Like, he's always been that way, but people wanted him to lead. And so he just felt that, I guess I should then. So I could see that happening here, where he doesn't want to lead, but, everyone wants him to. He came back to Alexandria and he really is, the person that sort of built that place, or at least saved it and everything. And so I could see him becoming the leader again, like, of Alexandria, but it all depends if he wants to go back there or not. And I feel like he probably would, just because Carl is there. Like, I could just see that, like, that just makes a lot of sense to me. I think he would go back to Alexandria. I think that's probably where the next part of his story would start in a new series or a season 2, is he would be back in Alexandria. I think Alexandria would look different for sure because the Commonwealth is there. They can also get resources now from the CRM, so things will look a lot different in Alexandria. But it's just kind of interesting when you compare Rick's story, because he's not really necessarily a leader right now, but Maggie, all these years later, she's still the leader. Like, she's leading, a new community called the Bricks. I'm really interested in seeing where the story goes for season 2 in terms of, I guess the bricks in general, because we don't know a lot about that community, but we are going to see a lot of that community like in the next season. So I'm excited about that because there just wasn't a lot of information given to us in season 1, but I get it. They were just sort of introducing everything. Season 2 has more episodes, and it looks like the characters are going to be spending a lot more time in these communities and stuff. So it'll be interesting to see how a lot of that plays out. But yeah, in the scene here, we do see Rick actually show up, and yeah, he sees Daryl, and the scene is very, very emotional because Daryl sees Rick, Rick sees Daryl, and obviously, like, in terms of Rick's reaction, I think that at this point he likely thought that Daryl was dead because Daryl was taken, you know, in the premiere, and at that point you don't know what's going to happen to him, and Rick, you know, might have thought that, yeah, he probably died at some point, or maybe he was concerned about it, like he just had no idea what was going to happen. And so I just think, you know, and also because Daryl, like, I don't want to say he got Glenn killed, but, you know, he was kind of, what he did started that. And so I just think that Rick is like he knows what Daryl just went through. And so I think he's feeling really emotional for Daryl, but also because like he's still here and he's so happy to see him. And I think for Daryl, like at this point here, Daryl just went through a lot. And so I think Daryl seeing Rick again, like it's just that connection going back to season 1, right? And so seeing each other, like it's emotional, honestly, watching the scene, like you just get emotional watching the scene. It's really incredible. And it just makes me really excited thinking about when these two characters see each other again for the first time in like however many years, right? Because like at this point now, it's almost the other way around. And like, I mean, obviously Daryl saw Rick like basically, I guess, die on the bridge, right? So like for Daryl, he just believes that Rick is gone, even though like they found some information, or that's the thing, like it's not even really like, I don't like how they did it in the finale or the last couple of episodes of The Walking Dead, because Daryl didn't find out like for sure that Rick is out there. Like the way Judith said it was like, you know, he could be out there, but she also kind of said it in a weird way where Daryl had like no reaction to it. But also I guess they don't really know, right? Because Michonne didn't even know. Like she found some proof that, yeah, he survived like the bridge explosion, but it doesn't mean he's still alive to this day. So I guess they overall still don't really know. Until they see each other, they don't really know, right? So I guess that's sort of where Daryl is. But again, like after all of these years later, like Daryl seeing Rick again, it's going to be a really, really emotional moment. And that's what I mean in terms of a new series, like building up to something like that. That is something that I think requires a new series or a season 2. It can't be one of those things where Rick just shows up like in a cameo scene on Daryl Dixon, because it's just, I don't know, in terms of that overall story, it's not that exciting because you're going to see Daryl going through whatever he's going through, right? Like there's going to be some sort of story happening on that show, but like what, you're going to end it with him seeing Rick? And then like you don't even really know what Rick's reaction is going to be at that point, because Rick, like even if he's emotional, it's not going to feel like a really amazing scene because you don't really have any more context to what Rick's been up to lately, right? Like Rick seeing Daryl again, Rick might just be more happy, right? And it's not going to be that emotional. And I think that's where a new series of, like, again, it has to be more than 6 episodes. So even if it's 8 episodes and they reunite, say, in episode 4 or something, like, don't do it in the first episode. I get it, for the ones who live, it makes sense. You want to have Rick and Michonne together for, like, most of the series. But I really do think, like, for sure, you want to build up more of a story there. You want to have Rick, Michonne, Judith, and RJ, like, their story sort of, like, worked out and, like, what's happening there. You want Daryl's story to also be sort of happening as well. And then just somehow the stories collide in, like, a new series, right? Like, I think that's how you want to do it, because you want to build up an emotional moment like this. And in terms of the Walking Dead storytelling, I think that that's what people would want overall, is you want, you know, a longer series or a season, I guess, like at least 10 episodes, because you don't want to rush the reunion and then just have a couple of episodes of them, you know, I guess reunited. Like you want at least a little bit more than that. Like you want to be able to live in the moments a little bit. You want more of a story there. And so I think, like, yeah, you know, 10 episodes for sure, 8 to 10, I think would be really great. And I just think when these two characters see each other for the first time in like however many years, it's going to be a really insane scene. And that's why it can't be an episode 1 thing, because I think, like, that's the thing too, is I don't think it would be, right? Like, I don't think they're going to do the same thing that they did with Rick and Michonne, because if they did it like that, it would just be like the same thing. Like, I think all of us would know what to expect, because you would want to build like Daryl's story and his journey to seeing Rick. And so would that be the first episode, just like The Ones Who Live? And then you would do the second episode seeing Rick's journey to seeing Daryl? Like, you're not going to do that, right? So I think it would have to happen a little bit later. But again, you do have to sort of, I guess, juggle the story a little bit here, because you don't want to do what season 2 did with, Carol and Daryl's reunion. Because even though I do like when they actually reunited and stuff, in terms of the story, it actually hurt the story quite a bit because the story was so like separated, right? But that's the thing too, is like, I don't think the story here would be like that. I think the way to make it way more interesting is, first of all, Carol's story in season 2 wasn't the most interesting, like when she was on her own, because it was just her trying to find Daryl. And so it was a lot of like, well, we know what's sort of going on. And now it's taking away from the actual story of the season, right? The actual story of the show that was set up in season 1. So I think if there was a new series, it would just be the start of something else. And so even though you would have characters split up, it would be brand new stories. Maybe it's just literally Rick and Michonne doing a supply run, and there's just something going on, and then Daryl is like now back in America, and there's just something going on in terms of a different story or something, but somehow they basically reunite. And again, you have to come up with a story there that would be really, really great, but I think that's honestly how you should do it. But yeah, this scene here is just really incredible. Actually, Daryl does give Rick his Python back, so I'm trying to think of like when Rick would have gotten that gun taken away. I guess it would have been in the premiere, right? It had to have been. So yeah, it's just kind of insane, because now, like looking back at it now, I think Judith has the Python now, so it'd be kind of cool just to see Rick just, I don't know, again, I want to see all of these scenes playing out. Like I want to see Rick, maybe, he wears his hat again, or like, I don't know where this story could go next, but there's so many places that it can go. There's a lot of excitement here, and yeah, just watching this scene here just really made me think of like, wow, like whenever they reunite, it's honestly going to be a really incredible moment. And I do think that watching this scene here, it's really a scene that's not talked about enough. I think because people were not watching The Walking Dead as much anymore, it just made it not, that exciting. And I think that a lot of people just didn't really focus on it too much. But it's a really great scene, a really, really amazing scene. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it here though. Definitely post all your thoughts down below. Hope you all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.